had found an old version of H.G. Wells, an old copy of his book War of the Worlds, and it was in a dump. Actually, I found it, and this would be a kind of example of some of the experimental work I do. I generally sell these quite cheaply at markets and music festivals and art fairs. I mount them on black card, and it's a portrait of H.G. Wells, like just basically a simple doodle with the tripoded spaceship, well, kind of like from the book. And I call this culture shock. The reason for this is that H.G. Wells was more than just a science fiction writer. H.G. Wells was also a member of the Fabian Society, and quite a strange fellow, and a rather nasty fellow in many ways. He had some very strange ideas that were like basically fascist. They were fascist. He even said one time that if he was a dictator, he'd be a very cruel one. He considered anyone who wasn't basically white and Protestant to be a problem. He considered people who were like what he called the base. They were uneducated and they could never be educated, and there was no hope for them. He called them congenital invalids. This is basically the lower end of society, working class people. His ideas was to have them exterminated. And so what makes H.G. Wells unique was that he used his artwork, his books, in order to promote the social agendas of the Fabian Society, of which he was a member. So he was more than just an artist. He was someone who future-proofed culture, so people would expect what would come next. And this was an example of it. Was War of the Worlds. It was creating fears of Martians. In reality, it was just about how the control grid works today, and how they give us enemies all the time, whether it's like Al Qaeda, ISIS, the Russians, anything. They give us enemies all the time to worry about. And I deliberately left this like this. It'll be framed on the glass anyway, so I'll glue the sides down a bit better. It's drying out here in the very hot sunshine. But I generally leave the edges, torn edges like this, just to create effect, and put most of the glue around the middle here. It's just a multimedia piece that's kind of interesting, kind of thing that appeals to people who have like an interest in literature, or I guess socioeconomic issues, as well as someone who might want to collect an unusual piece of art. So that's it, culture shock. That's watercolours all in there, by the way.